the reason why innovation sometimes gets killed, what happens is whoever has this idea, whoever wants to do something different, something new, it doesn't really work, or the flow is not there for it to work at the store level. So there's a disconnect there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Performance Revolution podcast with my partners at Integra. Today, we're so excited to be having two incredible guests, which I'll introduce here in a second, but we're going to be talking about visionary leadership, so unlocking innovation for scalable growth in the hospitality industry. So before we do introductions, what I want to do is learn a little bit of context about my two incredible guests here today. First, Dominic, I'm going to jump right in here. Dominic Primucci from Pizza Nova. We'll go back to your intro. But Dominic, if there's one lesson that you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self that would accelerate your leadership journey or just the engagement with your people, your team, or your business, what's that lesson you'd go back and tell yourself?
That's a great question, Matt. To say one thing is very tough because you're going back to your 20-year-old self. So there's probably a multitude of things. Yep. But a couple things, really. I'm going to say a couple things. Your soft skills, developing your soft skills, because that today it's more and more relevant in these days in how you lead and how you lead your group and so on and so forth. And getting feedback from people. I think that self-awareness, when you have that soft skill, it helps understand who you are as a person. And one of the biggest things that I think is focus on what you can control. I think sometimes we go into situations and we try to look at all the other things around that really has nothing to do with what you need to do. So I think one thing is focus on what you control, because if you can focus on what you can control, you will benefit and you will be that much, I believe, a much better skilled person moving forward.
Yeah, and I think I really appreciate that because I have had the pleasure to work with you, with your team, and watching how you do control the variables. I remember a conversation, not to go back or say the P word, but during the pandemic, where we had a very candid, vulnerable conversation about the state of what was happening. But when I got off that call, I remember stopping and I checked myself. I said, how is Dominic so composed? And there was a lot going on then. Like, that was probably one of our most range in a conversation of emotion that we've had, because there's so many unknowns. But I really do appreciate that. And for you, what you just did is bring soft skills into perspective. Just how do we show up? I know soft skills we might see online as a buzzword, but it's just, what does that mean to you? Anybody in the audience, what does soft skills mean to you? And to me, soft skills just means how do we connect?
Yeah.
And how do we relate? How are we relatable? But Kenny, I'd love to jump back into you. And one question, because it was a pleasure talking to you before the recording. But one question I have for you is, what advice would you give leaders trying to balance bold and innovative ideas? Like, how do they fit them into their day-to-day operation?
Well, from a Canadian lens, when you think about it, Integra truly understands who their customers are and really what they truly require. Hospitality BDPs, as we call it, best demonstrated practices, change rapidly. Not enough leaders really share or know how to share the integral touch points of their business. That really requires how to pivot and when to pivot and the pivot points. You know the old saying, right? You don't know what you don't know. What I can say is this: Integra excels really in communication with their partners. They establish excellent touch points using leading technology on changing market trends. We all need to understand market trends and ways for their partners to grow and prosper. Because at the end of the day, it's really about bottom line, ways to save and control food costs or costs in general, and ways really to establish strong operating cash flow. At the end of the day, you need cash flow. And that really, as far as I've seen, they've accelerated their growth through listening, learning, and adapting, but most importantly, providing the growth engines and importantly, the communication tools required.
100%. And I think there's so much in there, right? What we're going to get into a bit today is, looking at patterns of what human behaviors lead to business results. right? So one thing I love about Simon Sinek, who we shared years ago, that profitability is a result of consistent human behavior. But at the end of the day, if we don't have cash flow, we don't have business. And I think what we saw in 2024, in my experience, was the cash flow crunch that really hit operators. And now it's, we always talk about cash is king, but we only put cash in the tills and cash in the bank if people do certain things inside of our operation. And one thing I just want to jump into now is just introductions. And I'd love to hear a little bit about both of you. So Dominic, what do you do? Who do you serve? Tell me a little about yourself and Pizza Nova.
Exactly. We are Pizza Nova. We are a family business. My father and his brother started the business back in 1963. We're 61 years or 62 years this year. Young, I would say. And what do I do? I mean, obviously, I run the operation here at Pizza Nova. We're a franchise business. We have 150 locations, which are traditional and non-traditional in that mix, more so traditional. And we have over 125 franchisees. We have, 45 people working for our office, our support. We call our office, we don't call it a head office, we call it a support office because we're supporting our franchisees. That's the business we're in as a franchisor. And, there must be approximately 2,000 people that work for the brand. And, my responsibilities is ensuring that those 2,000 people are able to bring something home and, and live their lives in the way they need to live their lives. So, and then, definitely support all aspects of our operation. From the franchising to marketing to admin to, we also have a DC commissary, distribution center and commissary that we run. And so that's a pretty wide gamut of things that we do. A call center as well. I forgot to mention that. We've had call centers since the mid 80s. And now today, moving forward, I mean, call center is slowly becoming apps and websites from an order site. So this is what I do and who I support.
Thanks, Dominic, for that. And I think the wonderful thing for the audience, if you're out there watching, I'm grateful to the guests that are offering their time and sharing their experience. But we have a family-owned startup business that is 125 so franchisees, 150 locations. If you're running a coffee shop right now, there's something to learn in what will be shared here today. If you're expanding a franchise group or something under your own umbrella, there's something really special when you can hold it in the family and continue to scale the way that we've all watched Pizza Nova scale. If you're in the Ontario market, I just think there's some really great success stories in the sauce that we're going to share here with you today. Do you see what I did there? Success stories. I don't know where that came from. That was good. Kenny, tell me a little bit about you and what you do and who you serve.
Sure, Matt. Thank you very much. I do love answering this question because, my journey really started in 1977. So that may be a long time ago for some of your listeners. And I started at McDonald sweeping and mopping the floors. And I love sharing that with folks because they see, wow, that's a real person. Like he actually swept and mopped the floors. And what I did was at McDonald's, I actually worked at the McDonald's across from the Montreal Forum.
Wow.
So what we used to do there is at 4:00, we used to serve Big Macs, quarter pounders, and French fries to the players.
Yeah.
We used to have a special room where they actually used to come with per diem coupons. You're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, the era of, for me, Yvon Cornouaille and Guy Lafleur, and they used to eat at 4:00. The visiting team used to eat at 5:00. And the refs and all other folks used to come in at 6:00 to eat. And I delivered the food up to probably a trainer took it in for all of them to eat. So that was a lot of fun. I spent a really good portion of my life living in Montreal. I worked for companies where we excelled in bringing large American brands to Canada. Pizza Hut was the first one. And what we really did was we Canadianized them. And Dominic would understand what that means in terms of the food cost and the labor components, and the taxable portions in Canada are much different than the U.S. Pizza Hut was a really, really fun experience. We started with one friend. We were a franchisee, So we were like a franchisee, and in my life, I was a franchisor. So I've been able to play on both sides. Pizza Hut, we had 46 restaurants. We had 1,200 employees. We had a support office with over 50 people. And most importantly is, Dominic, we had a call center with 178 seats and 15 supervisors. And we used to do 176 orders a minute back then. A minute. It was incredible. Yeah, with some of the restaurants used to prepare between 3,000 and 4,000 pizzas freshly made, really for the evening. Yeah, and we also brought brands like Starbucks and Applebee's and IHOP to Canada. So Canadianizing it was a fun time. I spent 11 years in senior care, running procurement teams there for Rivera and Chartwell.
Yeah.
And that was quite different. And now working for Sodexo and Integra in Canada, running the procurement team here. So had a good lens of the operation side, and most importantly, the procurement side. So it lends itself to, when you procure, you try to make the right decisions for all the operating partners of what really makes sense to their business.
Love that. And thanks. And you look at the experience in the call. And one thing like to come back to look at bringing brands like Starbucks and IHOP, like if anybody's done any reading on Starbucks, anybody who's going to allow someone to interact with their brand, it's incredibly well protected. So there's a way to protect a brand, but also looking at the sheer volume, of Pizza Hut when it was, I think we said before, Red Roof and this in-dining experience. And but even looking at, I happen to have a family member who, I don't even know if Dominic knows this, actually works in his call center. So to see the experience there and they love it, and how busy that is, and working in the call center and having the ability to work remote, but holding the standard of experience. And the one thing as we get into this, the one question I want to get into now is, I've heard, Dominic, you've talked about preserving the core. And to go back, I know that's a statement we've heard from a really great book, but what is preserve the core? Like, what was at the foundation of the growth stages of Pizza Nova that when you focus on it, it's still there today? And then when you preserve the core, after that, we'll talk a little bit about innovation. But what's at the core of Pizza Nova? Why is it so successful when there's so much challenge and, respectfully, failure?
Yeah, well, thank you, Matt. I think preserving the core, to me, it really means to remain consistent and true to something, who you are. And who is that? That's your core values. So it starts with your core values. Mm-hmm. And, if I go to a little quick sidebar story here, I mean, when we first developed our core values, we started talking with our team here, my team, and we're saying, well, you know what? Yeah, I can easily, have 7-8 things, put it down on paper, put it up on a wall, and the way we go. That's the core values of our operation. But that's not how we did it. What we did is we pulled everybody that worked for us in our business at the time. We pulled all our franchisees. We asked them what their personal values were and what their values they thought the business was. And that's how we collaborated to bring it down to 7 core values that we have. So we live and breathe those core values every day. What happens is that it's not just on a wall and nobody knows what it is. It's on a wall but we talk about it every time we do some training or coaching. We always try to refer it back to one of our core values, and that's preserving the core. And through that, I mean, core values of Pizza Nova right from the get-go was about quality. And what is quality? And our mantra was to have the best tasting pizza out there and be a premium product. But what does that entitle? And not entitle. What does that mean? You construct a building, and you got to build a strong foundation, right? You got to dig deep, build a foundation so the building can stand the test of time. Well, what is it in our world? In our world, it's pizza. And what is pizza? There's 3 main ingredients that go on a pizza. Practically 95% of every pizza, or maybe even higher, 99% of every pizza. It's the dough, sauce, and cheese. And that's our foundation. So we want the best possible dough that we continue to do. And it's been an amazing product since day one. And we continue to Respect, we say internally, respect the dough. We talk about our sauce. The sauce has got to be next. It's got to be the best sauce possible. We buy sauce that is, the tomatoes are picked and packed and sealed within 6 hours to seal the freshness of the tomato product. And then obviously the cheese. We buy a great mozzarella blend cheese that we use on our product. And then everything else reflects what the customer wants. Pepperoni, vegetables, other meats, other proteins, whatever they want, right? But that starts the core of our quality, because now when we go into other products, we want the best possible product that we can buy and the best possible taste of our quality product. And then preserving the core also talks about service. As you mentioned earlier today, that service, quality and service is by far the two things that is going to put you ahead of everybody. And I'll explain it even a little bit more a little later on. But we came out, like we did our core values, we took the same approach to having what was going to be our service strategy. And our service strategy, we took some time. It took a long time to have all our franchisees be part of it, all our staff, and so on and so forth, and collaborate and kind of really get through this. So then there is a buy-in that everybody knows what our service strategy is. And in our world, in the restaurant business, in the food service business, in the way our values are, it's first and foremost, you got to have a great quality product, and you better have an excellent service, because that is the foundation of that's preserving your core. That's the foundation, is preserving your core. And then there's other things, but I think those are the two major things that I probably want to, let you know about.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I love here, and I hope those that are watching, when we're listening, and you could see Dominic's physical reaction when he talked about the sauce, right? We're not talking about the sauce. We're talking about the core foundation of what lands for his cup, just like the way at Starbucks might talk about their coffee beans. I don't know anything about coffee beans, but I know that they care about their beans so much. Dominic cares about a sauce packed in 6 hours. If you're watching this, like, what's your sauce? Like, it could be your venue, your location, your staff, your service. It could be a product on the menu that you could get that passionate about to relay it. Because I think that's, like, when I think quality, but then I hear the story, that's when it connects. Because, like, we're all looking for something quality. But when we're looking to dominate a premium category, that's something incredible. And I just want to share a really vulnerable story to those that out there as it came up. I didn't expect to share this, but this is me sharing one of my biggest failures. Talking about core values, when they came out, a lot of people put marketing statements on their wall. So it was really, how do we create a marketing slogan rather than core values? So my first business I owned, one of the values that was on our wall said, provide our employees the best tools possible to do their job. And it was 1:00 in the morning one day, and our server wasn't working. And one of our employees literally stood on the desk and scratched the value off the wall. He stood up. This is him, a great guy, Rob. I thank him for it. He was frustrated. I think he had a couple beers in the office, to be honest, because that's how frustrated he was. But it showed to me is you can't write core values. You have to live core values. This was 15 years ago for me, and we were living our values, but I wasn't living that one. So I think when it comes to whether you have written values or not, I promise you they're in your business and you can see them. But what's that one that if you double down on would really accelerate your growth? And Kenny, I'm throwing you a little bit of curveball there, but I want to come back to, just as I heard Dominic share, is, what's that one key lesson that Integra's learned through its work with hospitality operators that has helped, as we're talking about now, accelerate growth through kind of a foundation and values. But when you come back to all of your experience and all the people you've interacted with, what's Integra learned about watching leaders, what they do, and how does it support their growth?
It's a really great question, Matt. Companies tend today to have a series of goals, be it financial, personal, corporate, while daily operations needs to be run at really financial gains when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's all about profitability, whether you're a franchisee or corporate. Mm-hmm. A lot of times goals do not resonate with the field. You have corporate goals. It just doesn't resonate once you bring it down to the field level. hence difficult to communicate, but most importantly, to operationalize. As Dominic could attest to, labor has become the hugest obstacle to overcome today, where labor costs are bumping up or more expensive than food cost, if not properly controlled. I never thought I would live to see that, but we're there.
Yep.
And people just don't have the same get up and go as they used to. You know, if I can make a suggestion, it's goals when created must always have an operational lens.
Yeah.
What I mean is, how will innovation, bold ideas resonate with the field? A lot of times marketers work in a vacuum and it just doesn't get there. The field kills it. Understanding the field and the unit restaurants can really, really kill innovation.
Yeah.
And especially if they don't adhere to it. And most importantly is, how is it launched and communicated? Keep the calendar, as far as I'm concerned, to a few great ideas a year at best. Yeah. Projections can't really determine if the innovation ideas will stick or actually drive that profitability lens that we all look for, especially as marketers look for.
Can I add something to that? Kenneth, when you said kill innovation, I mean, it just sparked a story. And it's so true. Once you get down to the operational level at the restaurant, at your unit, the reason why innovation sometimes gets killed, because sometimes what happens is whoever has this idea, whoever wants to do something different, something new, it doesn't really work, or the flow is not there for it to work at the store level. So there's a disconnect there. And I talk about this, and Matt knows this. I've said this many times in my meetings with my teams. I say, yeah, you know what? That sounds fantastic. You know what? I think this is a great idea. And then I ask the question, does it work on a Friday night at 6:30 when you're the most busiest time? Does the flow work in the kitchen? Because if it's going to disturb the flow, it's not, first of all, it's not good. It's going to affect other customers because they're not going to get their products on time or whatever the case they've ordered. And that's how innovation gets killed. Yeah. Because sometimes we don't think about the person that's actually got to do that job.
You know, that's so well said, Dominic. Marketers tend to lose their way from an operational lens, I always find, and get into the restaurant at 6:00 at night on a Friday and think how your idea is going to strategically work. And most importantly, that marketing campaign will drive folks to what that offering is, but other offerings will fall flat. And maybe they're more profitable. So innovation only takes you a certain way up that ladder, but people tend to go back to what they like, especially in a niche market like pizza.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Like, if it was me in the industry, there's an 8 to 10 minute conversation right there that there's an opportunity to rewind, starting with Kenny just sharing about what does operational execution look like. Easy for me to say as a coach, that's what I do. It's like, great ideas it doesn't matter if we don't execute. But I think what we shared, that operational lens, and then can you have a conversation with your team of what could kill innovation? How do we stay curious a little bit longer about what could get in the way of the brilliant ideas? And I know both of you have seen great ideas come to your desk, but back to Kenny's point, there are going to be remarkable opportunities presented to you in your restaurant or restaurant group this year in Canada. But one of the challenges is you can't say yes to everything. Dilute focus and intention. I couldn't rally behind Kenny's focus more. What are the 3 things that you do consistently, relentlessly? And there's power in saying no, although sometimes it's incredibly hard. So one thing, and just to stay kind of in this lane, the one thing that I'd love to bring both of your experience into now is, so we have these ideas, growth and focus. We're looking at innovation and product quality and service. But then we have a team, I don't know if army is the right word, of people that we're trying to engage and inspire. But to start with Dominic is, how do you take great concept and idea? Like, how do you get people to believe in quality? How do you get people to buy into your service standards? How do you get people to believe? Somebody came, they invested in a franchise, which really is a system. How do you really not just sell the opportunity, but create the belief in everybody, the 2,000 plus people that work for your team?
It's a great question, man.
Big one there. So that was overworded.
It's a big one. Yeah, it's a wordy one, but it's okay. How do you get them to believe? I think it's first and foremost. I mean, somebody's approaching you. They're coming to you for what you stand for in the marketplace. I think people understand what different companies stand for in the marketplace. You go to Starbucks because that's what you want to drink. You want to drink a premium coffee. You like the service or the atmosphere of that location. That's why you go there. So you understand what that company is portraying. And I think that's what we need to do consistently, is who we are as a company and portray that in all our communication. So we're not just talking about communication between internally, because that's important as well, but externally as well. So then it's all ties in together, that the communication is consistent. As I just said about, that innovation idea, well, sometimes there are things out there that, that are up and coming, and you're like, oh, you know what, we need to do this. This is a great idea. But then, think about it and say, well, really, does it fit our organization? Does it fit what we believe in? Is it part of our core value? Or is that something that is really out there and it's not who we are as a company?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to step back and say, no, we need to follow who we are as a company and continue, because the consumer, the potential candidate as a franchisee, potential employee that comes on board, they're going to look at and see what Pizza Nova, in our case, what Pizza Nova stands for.
Yeah.
Can I set an example? After Dominic's finished, sorry.
Sure. What you stand for will attract the person. You're not going to get everybody. Listen, I'm not a fool to say, we're going to get 100% of the people just got to love our product. No, that's not reality. All right. So, however, you have different things in place and you communicate those different philosophies. We do a lot of work in the community. So, a lot of our people come on board because they love the work we do in the community with helping out charitable organizations and so on and so forth. So there are people that love that's why they want to come on board, because they want to continue that. They want to help you develop the community and develop and be out there. So there are multifaceted, I'm struggling with the word here, multifaceted ways of doing things. So I think that if you're true to who you are, you talk about the success stories. We have franchisees that are very successful, and we bring them about. We allow them to talk in different avenues. We've done similar like this podcast with other franchisees. We have awards that we give to our franchisees and our staff for believing in our system, and it recognizes the people, and it's part of that. Matt, I know you're big on this, is recognizing people and patting them on the back, I guess you can say, and make them feel proud of what they've done and what they've contributed to our organization. Yesterday, we celebrated somebody that's been with us for 45 years.
That's incredible.
45 years. I mean, I sat at the table and we were all together, the whole staff here, and I kind of just went through where he started and how he started and where he went, and then I still missed a whole bunch of areas because he's done everything at this company.
Yep.
However, it was celebration, right? And you need to celebrate because that's what people want to. I mean, I know it's tough out there. It's working every single day. It can get tough, but if you celebrate, then it makes things easier and more attractive to people to come on board from an employee perspective, from a franchisee perspective, or even a customer. Sometimes customers love your product, but they also love what you stand for, right? So, I think that's my kind of thing, and is saying all that type of thing, where again, it's multifaceted, and you have to touch a little bit of everything and what you believe in as a corporate entity.
Matt, if I could just dovetail on what Dominic said, and Dominic is spot on. In 1990, we were looking at in the year 2000, we were looking at bringing Starbucks to Quebec. Yeah. There were already 100 different brands in Quebec, right? So we said, okay, how do we make a difference? Before we wrote a check for $4,000 to, sign up 35 locations that we committed to. But as Dominic mentioned, we strayed true fast to the fact that it's about the core is coffee. So that was the secret sauce. And we couldn't dovetail from the coffee. We got one of the coffees actually named for a Quebec brand out of them. And we got the logo changed to Le Café Starbucks Coffee, because we were afraid at that time. English-speaking coffee shops were being bombed and decimated. It was a rough time, but just to mention, we stayed core to the value, and our cafes were some of the most busiest cafes in Starbucks in a very complex environment of already 100 chains being out there. So Dominic's spot on. Stay true to your core. You will succeed.
Yeah, I think one thing that really stands out in both of your messaging there, and the multifaceted piece, like one thing that Dominic shared, and Kenny, you've shared this before and just brought it back as well, is it's not just like, how do we bring it back to who are we? So we're going to turn the question to the audience, right? Who are you? Like, who are you in the market? Like, one of my examples is when fast casual came from the West Coast in Canada to Ontario, we had 5 or 6 remarkable brands competing inside this space, but they all had dark restaurants, black uniforms, beautiful builds. But I couldn't tell you if I was in, I won't say the names, but in venue 1 or venue 2. Besides, who are you? Who are you to yourself and your franchisees, to your sport office? Who are you in the community? Like, I do have people on my team based on the charities that Dominic supports. That's why they buy, not just because they're a client. I have 2 of our employees have autistic children, and they look at the work that it means. Like, I'm telling you, we've had emotional meetings in our office of why we back, and every single meeting is supported by Pizza Nova Pizza because of what they do in the community. But who are you, and how does it show up? Not just in one way, not just to your guest. I had a great leader say to me, "It's how you show up in one way, is how you show up in all areas of your life." And I think that was brought back to both your conversations. We've just got a few minutes here left. So I want this kind of the impact statement around this question. I'm going to ask you both if it's okay. But we've talked a little bit about the business, the operations. I want to talk about Kenny and Dominic, the leaders. And just, Dominic, I'll start with you. Is there one lesson that you've learned? I wouldn't call it a failure, but a lesson that you've learned in your career, and not like, again, just because we're up against time here for our audience, but just to give them that we're all learning, failing forward, if we want to use the term. But what's one lesson that you've learned that set you on a new track and impacted you?
One lesson that I think that is it's really standard a bit, but I think people overlook it, is listening. We talk about communication, but we don't talk about listening. And I think listening doesn't mean that you just you just disregard what the person is saying, but really sitting back and understanding what that person is saying, understanding if there's an issue, if there's a problem, and how do you help, and how do you come to a solution. Because I think sometimes we have roadblocks, right? Oh, you're just complaining about this, or you're just doing this, and we're not necessarily listening to the person. Whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't really matter. It's sitting down, and I know the way I am, and the way I look at things when we're in meetings. mean, I may not say a whole lot sometimes because I'm just sitting there listening to understand and to everybody and to understand what's happening and trying to find that root of that problem. And this is where I think is overlooked. We talk about communication, and communication, it's two-way, but we don't talk about listening in that communication. And I think that is one thing that I've kind of learned over the years, that it's probably one of the most important things that you need to understand, because even if it's somebody saying something to me that I need to do, but I don't understand what they're saying, how am I going to go out and about and complete that project if I don't understand what my boss or my superior is asking? So I think that is an important one for myself.
And Kenny, I'll come to you in a second. One thing that's always stood out to me was Stephen Covey's comment of seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right.
And I've watched Dominic's journey from having to share more to doing more listening. But the one thing that he just shared at the end, if I could sum up all the incredible brands, leaders, and teams I get to work with, it's, are we in agreement? So are we in agreement to what we just discussed there? So I'm listening, and not only did I communicate right, but did they understand, and are we leaving the engagement in agreement? And if we could just pause and listen, how do we stay curious a little bit longer? It's a beautiful opportunity, and how people will come forward, because there's a lot of environments in the restaurant industry still which are managed, and they should be, no judgment, but there's thriving brands that are led. Kenny, anything to look at, like a lesson that you may have learned along the years before we get to our kind of closeout section here?
Yeah, it's really, it's about, and Dominic said it well. In my mind, I was thinking the same thing. It's really the strongest attribute, to be honest, that a hospitality leader possesses is the skill set to communicate and listen. Dominic said that 3 times.
Yeah.
Listen. People are our biggest asset, and in extremely short supply today. We're all fighting for that same person. Training programs, they need to be adapted to our changing workforce. And that'll really differentiate the winners from the ones just basically surviving, Matt. Yeah. Strategic buying of food commodities and in a timely manner will really allow folks to control their costs and battle the largest strain of their bottom line. But most importantly, at Integra, Canada, we excel at this. Yeah. And that's what makes us leaders.
It's also listening to the customer. Right? Sometimes we don't listen to the customer as well. So I think that's important as well.
The vision of the customer is primordial. It's number one.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is on the fly, but I need to acknowledge leadership when it shows up. So anybody watching this, if you watch intentionally Kenneth and Kenny's delivery there. So one thing that Kenny is world-class at, I've met thousands of leaders, is how he just changed his tone and his pitch and his direction when talking about communication. It's not by accident. That's something where we could literally sit back and watch both these leaders, watch how their tone, inflection, and pace changed when they talk about communication. Both of them calmed. Both of them slowed their speech because it's a natural leadership skill set. It's natural to some, but it's not common practice in a lot. When people can feel your energy more than your words and watch that you're listening and care, it can fundamentally change. Like as we get into our closing question here around innovation, I think it's that side. Do I trust the person who's trying to innovate? Whether it's with our guests, with our franchisees, with our employees, with our partners. So one question, I'm going to throw this was kind of off script, but just to close us out on the last question, when it comes to innovation, Dominic, what's one thing that when it comes, and I know innovation is a core value at Pizza Nova, what's one way you're looking to innovate heading into 2025?
Great question.
Without sharing any innovation secrets, I'm kind of
no, and I'm not going to say anything that is completely a shock to everybody. I think the tech issue, there's lots of tech innovation, but tech, I think people forget, is a tool. It's not what we are in our business. It's not who we are.
Yeah,
it's a tool to help us get where we are. But to me, the biggest thing, the driving force to me for this year is human-to-human interactions.
Yep.
That's the food service business. That's the restaurant business. Yes, there's third party that you can buy your pizza online on the app and so on and so forth. That's tech innovation. But somewhere along the line, somebody's serving that pizza to you. Whether you're walking into a location to pick up your pizza, or a driver delivering your pizza, there's an opportunity to have that human to human interaction. And that's what's going to give the customer an experience that they hopefully that you exude a great experience that they will keep coming back. And that, that's what I'm saying. It's not something that's out of this world. I just think sometimes we forget about our businesses and what we are, and we're there to, when somebody goes to a restaurant, orders pizza takeout, there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason. They want to have that experience. It's their hard-earned money they're spending, and they want to have a great experience. So it's up to us to give that. And there's that connection point that is very, very important.
Yeah. I think there's so much that I could add there, but I'll just kind of let us. I believe tech should be in support of our goals. We'll leave that there. It's another episode in its entirety. And I think there's beautiful ways for us to find productivity to get back in front of our people and our guests. But can you just close this? How is Integra helping their partners innovate, grow, scale? I've heard so many incredible things, but let's look at some tactical realities. Because I look at what I've watched, seen, and talked to with my partners who interact with Integra Sodexo, is it's a partnership. What does that look like? Like, what can they come to you for to say, help me grow, or help me find time to focus on my employee best?
I think Dominic touched on it, and it's really, how do you procure globally?
Oh, we lost them.
So we might have lost Kenny. There he is.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just flipped. Sorry. I had someone from Bulgaria reach out to me who they're actually starting to, use their fertile land, and how do you distribute to Canada? I was in Salinas Valley in Yuma picking broccoli, cauliflower, strawberries in the fields. I was actually working with a light on at 3 a.m. I was the only English-speaking person. Well, next to us, this was in 1994, were already robots with these visionary lenses on them, trying to pick tomatoes at the same time we were in broccoli. Technology is going to drive as places run out of water, as places run out of people to do this. This is our biggest threat. So really, from an Integra lens, this is ways to innovate through world technology will really help all of our customers thrive and prosper as the food cost control methods are challenged day in, day out. And just go to Costco and look at blueberries, or any grocery store. We used to get USA, then it went to Mexico. Now you see Costa Rica, you see Indonesia. We're buying produce in cans from Indonesia, from Vietnam. So other leaders across the pond and in other parts of the world are innovating and investing in technology, which I do believe will benefit Integra and all their customers as we move forward. But we have to be leaders in that.
I love it. And just to close, the one thing I wanted to thank both of you, but on Kenneth's point around, the partners, what I see in the opportunity, and we do work with a lot of major suppliers, and define suppliers in a bunch of different ways, but be curious, ask, like, what does innovation look like? How are they supporting growth? How do we create win-win partnerships? How are we sourcing the right product at the right food cost, whichever it looks like, or optimizing our menus, or creating space and time for our managers? I think right now, the more focus we can put on our people and our guests, the better. And we have partners that are creating space and time for us to do that. So I want to thank you both. Right on 43 minutes and 54 seconds. Nailed it. Told you that was the target that we had. I want to thank you both so much for your time. I want to thank our partners at Integra for creating this space and sharing these messages with the industry. We couldn't get this out there without them. If there's anything you hear today, reach out, and we will have some support assets go out with the episode to really summarize the conversation that's had here. Kenneth and Dominic, I appreciate you both, and thank you for sharing your experience on today's episode of the Performance Revolution web series with Integra.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Smart businesses are working with group purchasing organizations. Smarter businesses are working with Integra. That's because we are much more than a GPO. We provide more experience, more product categories, and more operational solutions. Integra is expert advice, quality and flexibility, purchasing power, and partnership to optimize your operations, elevating guest experience while saving on goods and services with the insights to keep your operations ahead. We know the challenges of operating in restaurants, lodging, senior living, golf, leisure, faith-based organizations, education, and acute care. So we provide services and solutions to help you maximize your profit margins. Save up to 30% on nearly everything you buy. From food to furniture, fixtures, uniforms, linens, capital equipment, services, energy, cleaning, and even training. Add in advice from experts who know your industry, and there's no better partner to take on inflation than Integra. With a deep bench of procurement experts monitoring prices, contracts, and supply chains, we help you find cost-effective ingredient options that exceed your customers' expectations. At Integra, your spend is always in your view and in your control, with data analytics and digital tools to ensure you're always getting the insights to operate more efficiently. Gain easy access to temporary and long-term staffing, your most frequently purchased products, and solutions for waste reduction and energy usage to keep your customers returning and your operations thriving. Unlock expert insights, unmatched purchasing, and unlimited performance for your business. Meet Integra and see the difference today.